the time today. So the New Mexico Food and Agriculture Policy Council is sort of, you've heard from them, hopefully most of you know that they've been in the trenches literally and figuratively for many, many years on these issues. As Ann mentioned, the COGS Ag Collaborative is trying to do some very, I think, important work. They had a great session on how to sell TPS. So the Land, Food, and Agriculture Working Group is really just sort of an ad hoc group of getting people together to talk about how we can work together across organizations, including, and I'm glad that we have representatives of our federal elected folks here, at the federal, state, county, local level, public and private, nonprofit sectors, try to really move this whole sector forward. And most of you, or many of you, have been obviously doing this a lot longer than certainly I have, and so I just appreciate you allowing us to sort of interlope a little bit. A few of us around the room thought it would be great if we started having a conversation about what we hope the sector would become. Peter Holter with HMI came in late, and Henry Rael and Pam and many of you, Ann said let's try to figure out where the gaps are and what we need to move as we all do our work. So that's what the Land, Food, and Ag Working Group is really about. As I said, it's not a 501c3. It's sort of a kind of place where we can bring issues. So hopefully we can do some of that work today and try to move things forward. So you want to get right into the agenda? So this is, for better or worse, we try to do this as democratically as possible. So if we leave just a big issue around the sector that we really need to talk about that isn't raised, please, you are all, everybody here has a vote, and let's try to make sure we talk about the issue. So what we wanted to start with, just briefly, hopefully you have the agenda here, we wanted to talk about how we did in the legislative session, and the short answer is pretty well, with one hiccup that I think hopefully we'll learn from, and Tim will tell us about that and how we can all try to support each other in the legislative session. Again, this is one important piece, not the only piece. There's a lot going on at the federal level. There's a lot going on in counties across the state, and certainly in the philanthropic sector that we all need to be learning from each other on, but that's an important one. We want to talk about sort of our maiden big collaboration. Again, we've had lots of efforts on the legislature for years, but this year we tried to, using these same groups, tried to come together and put the Food and Farms Day together. And I was not able to attend, but everything I've heard from legislators and from groups is that it was a huge success. We learned a lot. I brought some people together, and I did not very much of the work, and I think Pam's folks and many of you out there did a lot of heavy lifting to make that a success. So thanks to everybody who helped with that. We want to talk about that, and then what we really want to sort of talk about for most of the time today, for those of you who can stay, is kind of where do we go from here? Tangible stuff, infrastructure, coordination, integrating the work we're doing across counties, across the state. Where do we need help from our delegation? And so hopefully that'll be a very, very open and collaborative session. So why don't we start with, unless Pam or anybody wants to add, why don't we start with the legislative session and how we did. So the idea was, again, really the group that's been taking the lead has been Pam and her folks to try to move policy, to try to move some resources, and we got some. It wasn't like they were throwing money at Food and Ag, but certainly there were some victories for sure. We wanted to talk about some of the bills that we were all trying to work together on. And if there's anything we forgot, I would love for people to say, well, there was this other piece of capital that really is going to help the sector. We should mention that. But there are a few that we talked about it, and we did okay on all of them. So I'm going to start with one of our partners and just allow Tim nicely to talk about the great work that the Rio Grande Economic Development Corporation is doing and the South Valley Economic Development Center are doing, and an effort that they tried, which was a great effort. We all supported. At the end of the day, it got vetoed, and nobody really knows why. Maybe Tim can tell us offline, but the real story is there's always a story that doesn't really, it's not obvious. So, but I'll turn to Tim, and then I don't think Denise Miller from the
This came from this direction, so we already have this. So we're looking at getting those people included.
Then Clark will talk about the food and schools funding. We got some additional food and schools money. Lonnie Rader with the Simon Foundation and the Food Institute will be here later. If not, I'll cover her piece because I work with them. And then Elvis is here to talk about an important piece of capital that they Tehachapi got to help with some of their local farming efforts. So, did we forget anything else? So I'm going to turn it over to Tim, and just briefly, what was the project? We don't have to sort of do what happened, like why did it get vetoed, but also was there any lessons learned? So and where do we go from here on to that project? So
thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. Can you all hear me okay? Is it got okay volume back there? You good? You are back there? All right. My name is Tim Nice. I work for the Rio Grande Community Development Corporation. So we're a little community in Albuquerque, down in the South Valley. We have the Mixing Bowl Community Kitchen at the South Valley Economic Development Center. We also operate the Delicious New Mexico Project, and Vicki Baziban is here from that project. The thing we took to legislature, it's the first time we've ever done anything with the political process to this degree anyway, and it was a little bit of an experiment. It was a lot of fun. I got a lot of education. Got some hard knocks, and I learned kind of what to do and what not to do, I think, in a lot of ways. The way it worked is we have this community kitchen in South Valley that's been working for a long time. We've got a pretty well-defined process there. Delicious New Mexico, we started about a year ago, just over a year ago, to kind of to take the connections that we provide so people come in the kitchen and we get them immediate access to markets. We have all these friends who have retail outlets and other ways that get them to markets. We have the technical assistants that get them. So we got a really pretty short process for people, for entrepreneurs to come in with a food product and do some value added on it. And it's a pretty successful project. It's one of the biggest in the country for what it does. We've got some really cool national recognition for the project. And we got approached by a dozen communities around the state and say, we have this kitchen that's sitting empty. How do we make it do what you guys do? And so this project was actually a funding for rural communities around the state, starting with Gallup, Roswell, TRC, and Silver City, and then hopefully branching out to create a full statewide infrastructure where entrepreneurs anywhere across New Mexico can go to a local kitchen, get their products connected to markets in Albuquerque and beyond, and get the technical assistance and capital they need to get their products on running very quickly. So that, I think, was my biggest lesson. That was a really solid project. In this whole process, I never had someone say, that's a crappy idea, I won't support it. Republicans, Democrats, liberals, conservatives, everybody liked the project. And that was, I think, what enabled us to get as far as we did. We sailed through we got introduced. So the process, one, being a community member, no offense to the lawyers in the room, but as a community member, legislators love you. And you can just walk into their office and talk to them, and nobody turns you down for meetings. You just go in there and you honestly say that you have no idea what you're doing, and you have a cool project you'd like to talk to them about, and they will listen to you all day long. That was a really big factor to why we got as far as we did. So we got lucky. We started early. It's a mix of luck. It's a mix of hard work, and you got to use a little bit of skill here and there. But we got started early. We did the interim sessions, which were huge. We got some really early support. Economic and Rural Development supported the bill early on. The questions at the committees we went to were always friendly, and the ones that weren't were, why can't you do this in my community? And we'll get there, so hold on. And that really helped us out as well. By the time we got to the session, we had a bill introduced early. It was an Economic and Rural Development sponsored bill, and that gave us a lot of clout in the early on days. We got scheduled really early in committees. We got 2 committees in the House. Sailed through those with universal support. It was really a matter of having the right players in place. We had really strong support in the Finance Committee and the House and Senate side, and that made it get through the House and Senate really quick. We got put in House Bill 2, which was a major victory, and which I've been told was not possible by a lot of people. Of course, I also got told that it was not possible to make a bill by a lot of people. This stuff is all possible. We made it through the whole process. We got line item vetoed by the governor. And I think if I were to do this process again, that's the piece I was missed. Every time I went to the governor's office, I got a chance to corner her and talk to her about this a little bit here and there, but very short conversations. Where I messed up is every time I went to the governor's, they gave me a junior policy analyst to talk to. And I think the junior policy analyst never got the word out to the other people where it really mattered. So if I were to do this again, we had some really great Republican lobbyists that were hopefully getting the word into the governor. I guess that didn't work as effectively as I'd like it to. If I were to do this again, I'd have the governor or the lieutenant governor actually champion the progress, and that would have made it, probably make it a little bit harder to get through the legislature, but it would have ensured that when we made it through the legislature, we got a sign on the back end. So we're going to keep working on this project. We'd like to do it again next year. We've got some federal grants that have very similar kind of outcomes that we're working on as well. We're going to keep moving this forward. One of the really positive outcomes of this is now we do have friends across New Mexico, and communities around New Mexico that help us, that we're hoping can help us, can continue to work on their own as much as anything else, and we can be a resource for that. Those kitchens are still sitting around the country and the state. They're still empty. They still could use some funding to get entrepreneurs to use them. So it's a project we're going to continue, and I think that's my lesson. That's kind of a long rambling story. I don't know if there's any questions that could clarify anything. And
did you have any opposition at all?
No. I never had someone say, I'm not going to support this project. That's, I think, unusual, but I think that comes from being able to speak Democrat and speak Republican. Just the language that they use is different. And Democrats like to use language that's about helping people in poverty. Republicans like to use language about creating jobs. This was a common sense project. It didn't require a lot of capital outlay. The project was built right. In the whole process, I never had anyone say no. Not even the governor's office, actually.
And then just as a follow-up, just problem solving. I know that Farm to Table and Food Bank Policy Council does a great job of sending out, like, don't forget to write to the governor and make sure she signs those bills. Is that a step that maybe we didn't follow up on as much? Is that something that, I know that when we get those announcements, quickly get online, or?
That may have been part of the issue. We had some small networks that sent it, but we didn't make a real concerted push. I relied more on people on direct connections to the governor through lobbyists, and that may have been a mistake. Doing it again, I think I would definitely get more letters of support from across the state. It's really hard for me to analyze what happened there. There's only 5 people in the governor's office that do this, that go through and decide what gets lined out. So 5 people coordinate the process with the different agencies, and somehow between that person, whoever decided this, the governor's office, and the head of the DFA, and our legislative people that are pushing this, somewhere there was a broken link in that process. And I put in a lot of phone calls. I haven't heard anything back yet, so I don't know where that broken link is. I really hope to have a stronger analysis of this in a week or two, assuming I can get some information out of this.
And I know
you did a great job.
No, I did a great proposal. I know how many of you've actually tried to get something through the legislative process. Raise your hand if you have. It's a crazy process. There may be no explanation. There was some stuff, little things that I heard got vetoed. Sometimes there's no rhyme or reason other than somebody in the room who knows about it. There are projects that perhaps some of us would think are not nearly as meritorious as this that sort of sailed through. So for all of us, it's like, what did we learn? And and sometimes there is no explanation other than you keep at it. Some of the work that Pam's group and others have done, maybe it was the 3rd or 4th try before it sticks, right? It's just the nature of the thesis. It's a brand new concept. I think we did a lot of education of members, and so what you do is you come back next year and you try to and so I think the lessons are good, but I think I've driven myself crazy trying to figure out something that's so wired that it's signed or didn't pass a committee that I'm sure was going to pass, and so it's kind of a crazy process for those of you who are here. So anyway, congratulations for moving it forward. As far as to get it, the bill was great.
If I may, just one thing. I couldn't have done it without Farm to Table. You've got to have someone that knows the process, and Pam really helped us out with that Diane. That's definitely something that I learned. This group is incredibly important to getting future legislation like this passed, too. The stronger we are here, it really does trickle up.
Tim, you get AA and Golden Stars. I mean, seriously, somebody who took it so seriously, and our first conversation about it, and I don't think I hung up the phone before he was on the phone already making those calls and getting prepared. And I think you also just now gave us some of the best analysis of how a process works. even when you don't always know what's happening behind closed doors. And we've been doing this for a while, and we still are like, who's behind those closed doors over there? What kind of conversation are they having, you know? And you know that there's these pieces that you don't always get to see or don't always get to be a part of, but I think you just did an exceptional job of the work. And even with the governor's office, I think it's hard. We've had things vetoed that were there that we had no idea either, and then sat next to the governor this close, our former governors, and said, why did that happen? And that governor turned and looked at his staff and Ms. Clark and said, why did I veto that? Why would I veto that? You know, and then blamed it on staff in, you know, in his cabinet. And I was like, wow, that's a real bummer. And then I said, could you put that money back in since I want it there? And he's like, well, we can't do that now. I'm like, okay, we'll remember the conversation after the day. So, you know, and I think there's another thing, and we were talking about this, the outcomes you get after the session's over. I don't know how anybody else feels when you spend a lot of time there. There is a moment of depression, and I don't care how much you win or don't. It's a don't you feel like? I mean, it's a moment you like take a deep breath. It's like, oh my God, what just happened? And then there's the recovery part, which is writing letters, writing press releases, and things like that. And Tim, your work is the long game here. This is like the important things. You're introducing what's going on in the state. You're introducing new ideas, and I think I think you did an exceptional job. And I just think that it's going to build. You did everything right. There were no wrongs there at all, really, that I could see. You know that, and also it sets a platform. And I think that now keep the message positive. Keep churning out stories. So coming into this summer and the interim committee hearings, you're going to just keep rocking. You know, you're building it, and people get on board and they'll want it for themselves. So I think it's just an exceptional job.
And these are all of our sort of, these are all big. This obviously would have been great for communities across the state. So it's, you know, Tim championed it in his book. This is kind of our, and you know, the good news, the bad news for Tim, and this is bad news for all of us, is this particular piece didn't fall into place this year. First time we introduced it, you know, as Schwarzenegger says, we'll be back, you know, I'm going to do a bad accent. But the good news is, the other stuff we all tried to help, most of it made it through, and that wasn't, none of it was wired. We were all watching the bill like Tim was, thinking, God, I hope this gets passed. So the next one is, which was a success, one of our wins is, Denise couldn't be here, but Heidi's going to talk about the money that they managed to get in the budget for Farmers Market.
My voice doesn't carry real well, so I hope this is on. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, so first of all, a huge thank you to everybody here who helped spread the word about this bill, and Pam for being there right from the beginning and all the interim hearings and everything. So we did get our full $85,000 in recurring funds, which was great. I'll just talk about some of the process and some of the lessons that we learned as well. Like Tim was saying, I think it's really important to focus on this being a real bipartisan type of project. We had really great sponsors. Representative Tripp was a great champion for this bill. He was the one who got it into House Bill 2, and who was a Republican, which never hurts. And then we also had Senator Payton on the Senate side. So it's really important to pick your champions. That was one of our big lessons that we learned. Like I said, getting started early, just like Tim said, being involved in the interim committees. Denise was very, very tenacious about making sure that she talked to each of those representatives who were in those key committees, so the Ag Committee and the Finance Committee. I think some days it was as if the Roundhouse was her office. She would sit there for hours just waiting to talk to somebody, but she was really tenacious about doing that. Food and Farm Day was really great for us. It really helped raise visibility for it. And it was funny because we actually had a board meeting scheduled for that same day. And at first we thought, oh no, what a disaster. We're going to have to, miss one or the other. And then we thought about it, and because we're a statewide organization, all our board members are from all over the state. So we thought, hey, this is actually a great opportunity, which it turned out to be because we had all our board members there. We were able to take them down on the roundhouse floor, talk to each of their representatives about the bill, and show that we were really statewide and have, their constituents are from all over the state. So that was really great. We gave them out packets. We had collected, it was actually for one of our board learning topics, but we had collected from all over quotes from folks who saying what it meant to be a state that supports local food. And we had all these great quotes from people all over, and so we printed them out and gave them out to the legislators while we were there. We also did, I think there's copies over here, we did a front and back, very colorful and not too many words, which is great. Lots of photos, not too many words. Just saying a little bit about the organization, funds that we've leveraged from our small amount that we get from the state, different programs, and then some ideas of what we wanted to do with the funds. So that was another thing we did. And we did during the session, we did weekly email newsletters. We have maybe 3,000 or so people, primarily shoppers, I think, on our newsletter list. So we sent out weekly notices about it and tried to break down how you can support. We would literally put on how you can help in 1 minute, in 5 minutes, if you have more time than that. So we gave them options of how people could help. And one thing we did is on our website, we created a little form that people could fill out and say, yes, I support this bill. And they had the option to add in a comment about why, if they had an extra message for the representatives. And we got really great comments from that, too. I think we had maybe about a list of 400 or so individuals and organizations that signed that, and we presented that to the governor, as well as the finance committee. Facebook, also, that was pretty helpful. Once it got into House Bill 2, the governor has on her website a form that people can go to, write in a message saying, I really support this bill, and here's why. And it's really easy for people to do. So once it got into House Bill 2, we sent out weekly reminders to ask people to go to her website and send her messages. I think that was about it. Yeah, like I said, just getting started early, sending out reminders all the time, being tenacious about making sure you talk one-on-one too with those key representatives. So as far as what we're not 100% set in stone about what the funds will be used for, but we're thinking it's primarily going to be used to expand our fruit and vegetable prescription program, which was something that we've been doing in just Espanola this year, but we've been working with a school-based clinic to give weekly, monthly benefits to children with diet-related diseases, so diabetes, obesity, things like that, and give them nutrition education, cooking skills, and some benefits to actually go to the farmer's market to help them build that habit of eating more fruits and vegetables, shopping locally. So we learned some lessons from that. That was a project we did with Wholesome Wave, and we've found out a few things that we'd like to do differently, but we'd like to expand that this year. And then also develop a program to connect community health workers with their local farmers markets, because they're such great, they're great at spreading the word to people that they work and helping make connections. So they seem like a really good place to target to get more shoppers and maybe do some kind of incentive program with that as well. Just make them basically the farmers market champions in their communities. And then we're always looking for more funds for educational materials and outreach and matching funds for grants, all kinds of things. So looking forward to it. I guess one other last lesson that, we maybe could have asked for more money, but I think that it's always good to have a modest request because you're less likely to be lined out. Anybody have any questions?
Anybody else? Any questions about farmers markets or just the process? And I know some of you have been familiar with the process, so This was in the budget bill, $85,000, and again, it's not $1 million, but it'll definitely help these guys continue to do good work of the most farmers markets. Anybody have questions?
It's recurring, right?
It is recurring.
So have you ever had that recurring funding in the past?
We have, but it's been sanded and sunsetted, I think. And we have tried to do this for the last, gosh, do you remember how many years we've been trying to do this? Last, maybe not last session, but the one before, and we haven't gotten it until, so this was right there.
This was actually, it was something that was sunsetted, and I think it was in a budget for had it for about 4 or 5 years, and then it was clumped with some other projects as well. And so, yeah, they all held back last year, thought about it, and then came back this year. You all have some base budget funding in the Department of Ag budget.
Yeah, we have base funding, and that does get sanded a little bit each year, so.
And that was work done way back when we first started Farmers Market work, and that was in 1994, 95, and kind of close, and kind of built on that a little bit back then. Ebbed and flowed, had to come back, and we had to come back every year. It was never recurring. So there's some interesting things. You always have to keep that. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the next bill, but where sometimes you just have to keep coming back. And it was Representative Wallace who carried it for the longest time, along with Representative Tripping and Will Champion on the House side. And I'll never forget her being so angry that they couldn't get it in recurring. And eventually, I think she was just sort of. And she was great. She was just a wonderful advocate for it. And finally, I think they just had to give in to her almost to get it as recurring. But
yeah, the one thing I would add too is Denise Miller, and that's a township over at with Representative Wallace too, constantly.
Right.
Okay, over the past 4 or 5 years. And a couple of years ago, we went to Representative Tripp and said, we don't need any money this year, but it's nice to have one with you. And just do bullshit. So he was sort of relieved that the constituents actually came to us. We're not asking for anything, we just want to spend time. And I think, we did go for this past year. We had credibility with the guy. Well, they do need money. It's 2 years ago, they don't really need it. We're okay. And the late Representative Wallace was just great about championing farmers.
he genuinely loves it. I mean, he really does. I mean, he's really passionate about it, I think. And then the ongoing conversations that we would have with Representative Tripp was he also has a very strong relationship with Governor Martinez. And I think worked with her on numerous other things. So that was, I think, really to the benefit of the Farmers Market Initiative. Just had the right champions of people who genuinely care about it. And he's constantly accessible. Always willing to just get together and catch up about it.
So he actually went to the governor's office a couple times.
Yes.
And said, please leave this.
So this, again, $85,000, nothing to sneeze at. The same time, it's not going to sustain the organization forever. I think the key lesson is the fact that if you're getting a recurring, and those of you know the budget process, to get something that's kind of in the budget, that's a marker, that's a big victory. The other thing is, I mean, for those of you who are like, where are we getting into all this weeds with this legislative stuff, it's really important that we have a kind of a state commitment and a record of them starting to be more and more open to funding the whole sector, right? Because we haven't always had that. So some of this is very new territory. Some of it, these guys have been working on for a long time. So it is definitely a victory, and we got to be happy about it. And also work that a lot of you did. So we're going to go over to Clark to talk about the New Mexico Grown Fresh Fruits and Vegetables in School Deals victory, another victory.
Great. Glad to give you a little background. We've been trying since 2008 with this. We've had some very close victories, and sometimes those sort of fall apart at the last moment. You mentioned that vetoing appropriation several years ago. But I'm happy to report as I start, two of our partners who've been really helpful to us in the whole process, Linda Lovato from the School Nutrition Association just come in, and Lauren Correa from the Human Services Department. They were a big part. In fact, Corinne, I may have you comment in a moment. I'm just going to make a few comments, and then you can, because she was part of the whole process. helping us out this year. I think one thing, first we got $100,000. We asked for 1.4 million or thereabouts. Doesn't seem like a lot of money for a whole statewide project. Remember, this was an effort to provide some money to local school districts, school meals programs, to purchase New Mexico grown produce, food and so forth. And so $1.4 million didn't seem to us excessive right now. We thought there was a lot of money in the budget, in the minds of representatives and senators. But we only got $100,000, and it's not even recurring. So our struggle for this will continue on for the next couple of sessions, probably. I will say, I'll make one quick comment. I think, and I really appreciate what Tim was saying, and then Heidi too. It really helps to get it into HB2 early on. And I know this is a little bit boring for those of you who don't want to know all the ins and outs of this stuff, although it's in its own right kind of interesting. But we just weren't able to get our appropriation into HB2 before it goes over to the Senate side. We had a very strong sponsor on the Senate side who'd been with us for years on this, and he did what he could do when he got to the Senate side. And it wasn't so much the issue, the merit of the issue, I don't think, but just what the politics of divvying up the spoils, if you will, were going on at that time on the Senate side. So we got $100,000 into the budget, and it's not recurring, but it will give us a start, a real good start. So let me stop there just for a moment and let Corinne comment. Do you have any comments, Corinne, you want to make on this?
The only comment I have is thank you, everybody, for helping us. We appreciate your help, and we certainly will continue to work to increase the amount of money, and hopefully it will be reoccurring in the future. Thank you.
And let me just add further that it's interesting. I think the New Mexico Farmers Market Association and Heidi's report indicate one other thing, which is that it really helps to have a strong executive agency you're working with. So in this case, for years, they've been through the Department of Agriculture, which is kind of a little-known department here in our state, although we obviously are very concerned about it, because that's where a lot of our efforts are going to be directed toward. And yet, but they've always been very supportive of the farmers market movement, if you will. And it really helped to have them know how to do it already. And I think one issue that we'll be facing with our money, $100,000 for SB 80, is it's a different department. It's PED who does a lot of, they process a lot of money for the school lunch programs, but it's all federal. And so I think we're going to be interesting bureaucratically how to work this out with PED to make it as equitable as we possibly can for a relatively small amount of money. So I think another facet besides lessons learned is to have the money go to an agency that is already used to it.